Woohoo! It's Tuesday night and we are live to go over this chapter. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Let me just pull up my notes real quick. Welcome. Hey, family. Welcome. Welcome back to Becoming Supernatural live series. If you're new here, you know that I am Brittany. Hey, or maybe you don't know that. Let me start that over. Welcome. If you're new here, I'm Brittany. Hey, your manifesting mentor. I'm not a coach, I'm not a guru, but I'm a woman who walks the walk and shares what works. And so we've been reading Becoming Supernatural chapter by chapter and going live twice a week to share my personal reflections. And tonight we're diving into chapter 11, Space, Time, and Time Space. This is probably my absolute favorite chapter because it's the one chapter that makes everything that I've ever believed in spiritually make sense. And I say that not lightly. I want you to take this chapter very seriously because there's nothing like the teachings that I've learned or that I've fully come to understand. And I'm still going to continue to study because, like Dr. Joe says, you could do the work and you could be a great master and you'll still forget. That's human nature. And when you forget, you got to come back to the basics. So that's what I'm doing by reading this for the third time. And tonight we're going to break down parts 1 through 3. So get comfortable, grab your journal if that's your thing, and let's explore this together. But before I start, I do want to go over the basic premise of this chapter. And that's where Dr. Joe breaks down space, time, and time, space. They are two different things, and we exist in both of them all at once. But we didn't know how until Dr. Joe really gave us the blueprint. So let's listen to this. So, space time is this 3D reality. It's how we exist physically in this physical world, it's how we live daily. In space time, matter is primary. That means we are physical matter. That is primary in this 3D reality. But energy is secondary. So energy takes a backseat. Dr. Joe says in space time, you are somebody with something in somewhere at some time. And that's how we identify through our five senses, right? We have an identity. We know where we live or where we come from or where we're coming and going. We are existing somewhere, right? And always in some time, right? We know what date we were born. We know what we have to do on the calendar, our to do list, you know? So he says change in this reality happens slowly because if you think about it, if I hold up 2 points, one point is here, another point is here. If I want to get from here to here, I got to move through space, and that takes time. So, change in this 3D reality happens slowly over time through physical effort, action, strategy, hustle, all the things we've learned about hard work. You want to be a millionaire, you got to hustle, right? Like everything that we about our existence requires us to take action, work hard, play cliche sayings, it's all involving effort. And we've seen it through the history of humanity. But that's the only way that we've seen it until teachings like this came about. So he says in space time, you're always separate from what you want. So you're taught to go get it by moving through space. Time moves linearly in space time. So past, present, future, linear, right? So he says in space time, we're reacting to our environment and living like victims of our circumstances. We believe we have to do in order to have. And that's the way that we know. It makes perfect sense, right? It's very logical until you understand there's another part of our existence. We're not just physical bodies, we are spiritual beings having a human experience. And so that's where he breaks down time space. So, time space is the quantum field, the unified field. It's what the yogis sit in meditation to practice reaching that stillness within us, right? but it's more than what we've understood it to be. This is the non physical dimension, the invisible realm of energy, possibility, and consciousness, right? So in time, space, energy is primary and matter takes the back seat. So, energy in time space, when you are in meditation, you're closing your eyes and you're slowing down those brain waves and you're drifting into beta brainwave. I'm not beta, theta, alpha and theta brain waves. You are slipping into this non physical dimension. And here, there is no body, no time, no identity, and no stories. So you are literally shedding all the stuff that bogs you down when you come into this still, quiet space. From this state, you create reality from the inside out, not by effort, but by alignment. Because why? Because in time space, energy is primary. So aligning with the frequency is all that is required. So all possibilities exist simultaneously in time space. So remember, in space time, time is linear, past, present, future. In space, in time space, time is, I'll call it vertical. I won't even say what I was going to say, but imagine the past, present, and future all existing now in this moment. And that's what time space is. And in time space, you are the observer. When we practice meditation, we practice quiet in the mind, right? And recognizing there's a consciousness behind all of that thinking. We are pure consciousness, right? So we are the observer. That's what being the observer is. You align with a new reality energetically, because here again, energy is primary. And the 3D world will reorganizes around that frequency. And that's what Dr. Joe breaks down the difference of time space and space time. And he says to change your life, you must stop trying to create from space time and start creating from time space. That means letting go of your identity as the old self, entering the field through meditation, stillness, elevated emotions, becoming a conscious creator instead of an unconscious creator, which is what we all are, unless we grow aware of this information and start to develop practices around working with our existence and how we exist, both in space time and time space. So, space time is where we chase after what we want, and time space is where we align with it energetically and let it come to us. And I just had to do that recap because, again, no matter how long you've been doing this work, you will forget. This is again why I created this playlist and I wanted to read it so that it could serve as a resource that people can continuously come back to as needed, right? So let's go over part one, which is the introduction. I pretty much covered what the difference is between space time and time space, but Dr. Joe says that most of us are living in a constant state of survival where our attention is on threats, problems, and lack. And lack can show up in many different ways, right? It's not just about money. It's also, I don't have what I need, right? I don't have enough love. I don't have enough support. I don't have enough, whatever it is that you might be feeling you don't have enough of, an awareness that you don't have what it is that you desire. And he says that that survival mode is what keeps our biology locked into the past. So for me, this always hits home for me whenever I read this chapter because I can look back and see moments where my body was stuck in stress. I think I shared in one of my lives why I came back to these teachings and this particular book was because I had a pattern that I recognized that I could not shake. And I know all the things. I've been into personal development my entire life since I was a little girl. My mother would give me books like Think and Grow Rich when I was like 10 years old. You know, my grandmother kept me in the church. So I was very much into spirituality. I had a spiritual life, but there were some things my intellect could not penetrate. And when I started learning this work from Dr. Joe, I understood why. It's because of our biology and how we exist, and how the body has its own memory, and how our nervous system is hardwired for stress. and how, no matter how much we think about something intellectually, our bodies might be living in the past. When I recognize that, like I realized, like, when I was doing all the right things mentally, breaking free from the old self requires not just new thoughts. You could affirm all day, you can think positive all you want, but if your body has been conditioned to live in survival, then good luck with that. Because the moment you get triggered, all bets are off, and you're going to go back to the patterns that have kept you in survival. So new emotions and new energy are really the way out. And that's why I'm so passionate about sharing, becoming supernatural. If this resonates with you, put some hearts in the chat. Also, let me know where you're from because I talk back, but y'all know I could talk. So I will go on and on if y'all quiet. But this is why I'm so passionate about this work, because it touches on everything I've ever learned about spirituality, and it just demystifies the mystical. It's no longer woo woo. Like, going back to read the Bible now after learning this, I'm like, oh, Jesus understood what he was doing when he was healing somebody, because Joe talks about that, and he's going to talk about it later in this book. I think in chapter maybe 13 or 14, coherence healings. We can heal each other energetically. When we learn how to manage and really work with our own energy. Hi, all natural Virgo 44, welcome. When we learn how to work with our own energy and balance our own energy centers, not only are we working to create homeostasis within our own vessels, but we have an energetic effect on everything we touch, our entire environment, the people who we're connected to. And it doesn't just have to be physically in your physical vicinity. You can hold an intention and have energetic influence. So this is what like I'm so passionate about this, because I need more people to understand this. And if religion is the barrier to us getting information, I like the way Dr. Joe teaches, because it does not matter what religion you are a part of. All the people in his community are from all types of backgrounds, and they learn how to quiet that religiosity within them and realize the truth when they see it. And a lot of them even quote it as helping them deepen their connection in whatever their religion is, because now they have a better understanding of what it is. Because most of us, we turn to religion out of default, out of tradition. Many people don't fully understand what they're into. They just know my mother, my grandmother, my father, the people in my community, this is what we tune into, this is what we turn to. And so that's also a part of the program. But the better you can understand it, the more you can live with conviction about what it is that you're subscribing to. Because to me, I think Christ is the most beautiful example of how to be, right? But if I don't understand myself, I'm going to judge myself, because it's hard to be exactly like him when I don't even fully understand me. And I feel like that's what these teachings really truly do. And that's the purpose that it serves for me. And so I will sing it at the mountaintop to all my friends. And I got a lot of friends from different backgrounds, different ethnic, cultural, nationalities, all that, religions, all that. And I will tell them all. And I will say it to them in their language. If I got to say, Allah would want you to XYZ, Christ, Jesus, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit will want you to understand. Listen, truth doesn't care who tells it. Just get it. Okay. All right. So someone submitted questions. I have two questions from this section. Someone said, what's one way you notice your body reacting from a place of survival, even when your mind wants to move forward? Ooh, that's a good one. Listen, I think most people come to this work because they encounter that very thing. Noticing that your body is reacting from survival when you know intellectually, I want to move forward, not just because I want to, but because it's healthier, because it's just better for me. And I'm tired. I'm tired of existing in survival. And one way that I notice that my body is reacting from a place of survival is exactly that. When I want something or I desire something, but emotionally I'm not on board, meaning there's some fears, there's some doubts, there's some negative chatter about it in my head. I'm not feeling like I can fully connect with it. I feel separate from it. Keyword separation. Remember, what we talked about with time, space, and space time. When you feel separate from whatever it is you are desiring, praying for, that is an indication that you are feeling that your body is reacting basically from a place of survival because the unfamiliar feels unsafe. So when you're in the unknown, you don't feel safe. And that's what Dr. Joe says in this work. We're practicing to grow more and more comfortable lingering in the unknown. So that's what the meditations are all about. The longer you can linger in the unknown, when you can linger in the blackness, in stillness, and not be rushing or trying to do your to-do list in your head or worrying about your calendar or what you got to do in the next 30, 40 minutes, and you make time in this present moment. When you do that and you linger in the unknown, you're conditioning your body to be okay with not knowing every single detail, every next step. And that's a better, healthier, more wholesome way to exist. Because trying to control this life will drive you insane because you can't do it. You can't do it. There's too many factors that are beyond your control. And so trying to think your way into controlling something, you only end up draining yourself. It's not sustainable. You're in survival because when you can't control and predict, now you're anxious or you're depressed or you're angry or you're frustrated. And we know what those chemicals do. Emotions are chemical reactions in the body. We know what they do now. We've been reading this book now. So we know. So I hope that helps. That my way of understanding when my body is reacting from survival is when I feel separate from my good and I'm reactive. I'm worrying, I'm stressed, I'm depressed, I'm frustrated, I'm anxious, all the things. That's how you know. Even when you want to do something better up here, right? Number two, someone says, have you ever experienced a moment where relaxation or gratitude shifted your reality more than effort? Yes. Actually, all the time. I have too many experiences where this question to me represents surrender, like relaxation or being grateful in the present moment, even when things aren't what I want them to be on the surface. Like everything changes for me. I think that's why I came back to this work so that I could return to that practice more frequently than I do stress and worryation, right? Because everybody's got problems. Problems are a part of this existence, right? So we don't do this work to be problem free. We do this work so that if problems are a given, it's inevitable because I'm just here, right? That's what 3D reality is. You're working with so many other energies and different people with personalities that are different from yours and beliefs and factors that you can't control. So problems are inevitable, but it's how you navigate the problem. So for me, when I can condition myself to return, even if I react, because I'm human, we all are. It's not about perfection. But when I can condition myself to return to, let me just step back. When I do what I can, and I finally get to a point where I'm just like, let me step back, let me relax, let me trust. Trust is a huge factor for me, right? It's a huge deal in all of this work. But when you trust, and then obviously gratitude is an elevated emotion, when you can not just trust but feel appreciative of what is working, appreciative of what you do have in front of you, even if it's not perfect yet, right? When I do that, everything always works out. And I think that's why I return to this work because I realize that things work out regardless of whether or not I stress about it. And maybe if that resonates with you, if you can identify with that, drop a comment, drop some fire because your worry is not a part of the recipe. Like things are going to work out regardless. So you could either worry and let things work out and conserve your energy for something creative or better, or you can stress and let things work out and exhaust yourself and make yourself sick along the way. That's what I started to recognize. That's what I noticed. So the more I relax and surrender, I call it surrender. You said relaxation. or drift into gratitude, life is going to be life regardless. So pick a side. And to me, I realized that stress is tearing down my physical body. I don't need to continue to live that way. I don't want to experience disease. I don't want to experience health issues. I want to be as vibrant and have as much energy as possible. And stress, worryation, those lower frequencies drain you and they stop your body from what it can do naturally, which is heal. You take yourself out of homeostasis. Healing happens in homeostasis. It doesn't happen when you're stressed and in fight or flight. It can't. You got too many stress hormones pumping through the body. It can't create the hormones and the chemicals that help heal your body. You just can't. So yeah, like I experience it often. That's my way of existing, honestly. Like, I'm not saying that I don't stress out. I do. I freak out. I have my moment, but I have my practice. And your practice is your savior because we have all the tools. I don't, whatever your faith is, the divine gave us all the tools. We just need to know how to use them. We just need to know, number one, what's in the toolbox and how do I use it? And becoming supernatural is a wonderful set of tools. And when you use it, you recognize the quality of your existence is different. It just is. You don't have this many people raving about these teachings or all these testimonials where Dr. Joe is not centralized in any of these teachings. Yes, he's created a community, but these people are doing the work themselves. They're doing the work themselves. He has the meditations, but even if you don't use his meditations, if you just do the work, it works because he's teaching you how to exist better in this physical existence by letting you know, hey, these are your tools. This is what you have to work with. And if you work with it like this, see what happens. Just experiment. So yes, I hope that answered your question. I hope that answers your question. So that was part one, space, time, and time, space, the introduction. Part two, he introduced Newtonian 3D space, which is space time, Newtonian 3D, which is space time reality from somebody to nobody. And again, I did a pretty good breakdown of what that means. But in this particular section, he talks about how when you're living, when you're, we all were conditioned to be somebody with something, somewhere, in some time. And it all sounds logical, but it's actually very limited because that's not how we only exist. We exist beyond these bodies. We are a consciousness, again, a spiritual being having a human physical experience. So in this identity, we're always going to be separate from our desires. We're always going to be trying to chase them down from the outside in. That is what he calls the Newtonian model. It's what we all learned in school in science, you know. But to access the quantum field, he's helping us move beyond the Newtonian model and understand a lot of what quantum physics is here to teach us is that we have to step out of this limited version of ourselves to become nobody, no one, nowhere, and no time. And that's exactly where all possibilities exist. So if you knew that infinite versions of you, and infinite is infinite. I'm not talking about a little, I'm talking about more than you could count. Infinite versions of you exist. And the only thing you need to do is tune into the frequency of who you would be in any of those infinite realities. And that's what draws it to you and locks you into those potentials. Like, if you knew that was a possibility, would you continue to limit yourself to only what you know and what you've seen on purpose? I mean, I wouldn't. When I understood this, I was like, oh, game on. Because listen, before I even knew any of this, I'm a daydream believer, right? I'm an Aquarius. My birthday is Valentine's Day. And I believe in possibility. I'm a water sign, so I'm super creative. So when I heard these teachings, it just spoke to my soul, right? Because I know that there's something beyond this physical existence. And so for me, it's like it just reminds me that letting go doesn't mean I'm losing myself. it means I'm becoming more available to my higher self. Because if infinite potentials exist and I'm only holding on for dear life to argue for my limitations, argue for the things that I think I know, when there's so much more outside of my knowledge base. Like, listen, all of us only know what we know, right? We are limited by our physical experiences. And this is why we come into relationship with other people, especially those who grew up different from us, because it gives us a diversity of perspective that, hey, the way I exist is not the only reality that exists. Because if it was the only reality that exists, I'd be the only one that exists. We are the infinite expressed as physical beings. So the divine created the entire spectrum of humanity, different people, different regions, different ways of thinking, being, and existing. And so, who am I to say that my way is the only way? I don't want to limit myself when infinite is available to me. So, every time I quiet my mind and I surrender the old story, I get closer to the woman I know that I'm actually here to be. I stop limiting myself. I start trusting more. I start exercising my faith like the muscle that it is. Because faith doesn't just come because you just say, oh, I believe. It comes from inner conviction, from repetition, from a constant surrender and acceptance to information, from a gathering of evidence, which is what your analytical mind does. It is challenging for you. It's challenging for all of us to surrender in meditation, but you get better through the practice, right? That's why we return to, we call it a practice because if it was a one off, boy, we'd all be masters on this planet. We would all be instant master. And we are masters, but we're masters of what we do. We're masters of what we embody ourselves to be day in and day out, right? So if you teach yourself to tap in and tune into the infinite that's available to you by allowing yourself to, you know, meditation looks different for everybody. Not everybody can sit on a chair and call it meditation and tune in that way. I know people who prefer Dr. Joe's walking meditations a lot better because while they're walking, if it's a scenic route, they can really go into their subconscious a lot faster. Everybody's different. For some people, my mom, she's a creative. She has to she's conditioned herself to meditate, but for her, things like writing was meditative for her. Or, you know, like I said, the possibilities are infinite. So if you're finding it challenging for you to surrender in meditation, be patient with yourself because you know a lot of what is challenging you didn't come overnight. You know, by the time we're 35, we're pretty much hardwired into our program. We have a set of beliefs that nag us in the back of our heads all day long. And so be gentle with yourself and just don't focus on perfection, but continue to practice. Because I promise you, I was just talking to my mother about this because she's been on this path with me. She's actually everything that I'm into, she picks it up. Like I think it's so cool because I feel like not a lot of people can walk a spiritual path with their parent. I don't take it for granted and I don't take it lightly. But we were just talking about how the more I practice meditations, the easier it is over time for me to surrender and for me to drift into alpha states, alpha and theta states. When I first started, it was hard for me to quiet my mind because I got a lot going on always, right? But I started making it a priority. I started doing other things that helped me slip into having more discipline to show up in meditation, like fasting. I did a fitness, not a competition, but I did a fitness challenge for 90 days. I did a 14-day fast. So I always had this like curiosity about challenges like that because I always knew that somehow, some way they were leading me to become more disciplined in general. So whatever I want to apply my discipline towards, I can. So it was always that for me. But as I sit in meditation and I practice it daily, and I've been doing it for years now, I find that it's less of a struggle, right? And then I can focus on something else because it's always levels to growth and evolution. So when I'm no longer fighting myself to get into that space of surrender, now I can slip into, focusing on other things that I couldn't get to. B777 says, even when your mind is going and you lose focus during meditation, good things are still happening. Oh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely, B777. Listen, just because you can't see what's behind the veil doesn't mean it's not working. And I think that every single time you make a decision to make time to just be more in tune with yourself, with your body, that is the evidence. Like we think it has to be the tangibles, the material things, the evidence of circumstances changing before our five senses, right? Space time. But in reality, the change is every decision that you make towards tuning in. That is the evidence. So you can almost bank, not even almost, you can bank on the fact that every time you tune in, things are shifting for you, right? So it is challenging. It does not feel easy. You have a conditioning, we all do, but the practice is what gets us there. And it's not a linear process. I always say manifestation, none of this stuff is a linear process. I have really good days and then I'll have an awful day. And I've been practicing this stuff for years now. So again, it's not about perfection. You will always continue to meet new levels of self as you continue this practice. Even Dr. Joe says he teaches this stuff, but he has to return back to the basics, right? Because we're human. No matter how much he studied or how much he understands to be able to help guide other people through the work, he still returns to the basics. We read stories in the Bible about Jesus. Jesus wasn't always having an inner conviction. There were moments where he doubted, where he had fears, where he was challenged, and he had to return to the basics, to the practice. His daily practice was that elevated consciousness. B77 says some prayers and meditation that seem to go nowhere later manifested themselves beyond belief. So even when you think nothing is going on, things, yes, are occurring at will and will be present later. Absolutely, B. Absolutely. That's exactly how this works. Right? It's like you don't plant a seed and then dig it up every 5 days to see if it's growing. You nurture it, right? You develop a practice around nurturing it. You water it, you make sure it has the right amount of light. If you really got a green thumb, you'll talk kind words, speak kind words to it. You will be loving and kind towards it energetically, and that will help it flourish. But you won't be able to see the roots taking as the roots digging deeper into the soil. You won't be able to see that on the surface. So you don't know what's happening until it finally peaks. That's this life. That's this journey. And that's this work. And it's the hardest work that you'll ever do. It's the hardest work you do on yourself, but it's the most rewarding, it's the most fulfilling, and it's the one type of work that pays lifetimes over. Dr. Joe talks about this as well too. Like, you know, I saw a testimonial of someone in the community who had some healings from some physical conditions, but she was most thrilled about her emotional healing because she said that she understood that she was healing generational stuff, her father's trauma, you know, and I really truly believe if you're into that, you understand or you believe in being reincarnation, that you're not just healing the things that you've lived through. And the way she said it was so beautiful because she talked about it like she said, if you understand that energy cannot be destroyed, okay, hold that concept. Energy cannot be destroyed. It can only be transferred from one source to the next. Okay? That's a big concept. But hold that thought. If energy cannot be destroyed and it can only be transferred from one source to the next, what do you think is happening when we have emotions that we're dealing with as humans, right? And we step into a room, we're bringing those emotions with us in that room. And emotions are energy in motion, right? it cannot be destroyed. It can only be transferred from one source to the next. So if I walk into a room with joy, that joy is going to be transferred from me to whoever else is in that room. Same with any other emotion. If I walk in with rage or frustration or trauma responses, that energy is never going to be destroyed. It can only be passed from one source to the next. So what she said was she understood that. And in that way, as she healed emotional trauma, she said the trauma didn't belong to any of us. It was just our turn because the energy cannot be destroyed. It can only be transferred. But what we're learning through this work is not to continue to transfer, but to transmute. We're learning how to, whatever that trauma was that might be stored in the body, we're learning how to work with it and transmute it. So that depression, that anxiety is no longer going to have a stronghold on you. You know how to recognize the energy and bring yourself back to homeostasis. And what is that doing? You're transmuting that energy and turning it into something healing. You're turning it into love. You're turning it into gratitude. You're turning it into those elevated emotions that you continue to return to and practice. And I love that. I love that testimony. I'm going to see if I can find that testimonial and add it because I created a playlist with some of my favorite testimonials from Dr. Joe's teachings. But thank you, B7, for that. That is true. Like, it seems like it's not working. It seems like a challenge because you think it's not working. You think you're not doing much. You think you're not making a dent because you can't see it with your five senses. That's that space-time thinking. Well, we're learning how to think according to time space, where we realize I am more than this body. I am more than my thoughts. I am more than these emotions. I am more than my location, my zip code. I am more than my income, my salary, my job title. I am the consciousness, the pure consciousness, the observer behind it all. And I can observe the infinite. Let me pick any, many, miny, mo. I choose that one. Let me tune into that. That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing as we are learning how to become supernatural. And that is our natural abilities, y'all. We just forgot. We come into this plane to forget, only to remember again. That's a joke I had with my mom. We come here to forget just so we could remember, work to remember. And so someone did, I did have a few questions from this as well. Someone said, how do you relate to the idea of becoming nobody? Does it feel freeing or scary? Oh, that's a good question. That's a good question. So for me, because Joe wasn't my first introduction to some of the spiritual side of his teachings, I understood that I was more than my body. So I didn't have a negative identification with him saying, in order to reach the quantum field, you have to become nobody, nowhere, in no space, in no time. I didn't have a negative connotation with that. But for some people I've heard, and I'm actually going to link a testimonial where a young girl cured herself from cancer. She healed from stage 4 cancer. And she talked about how it was so difficult for her when she would listen to him in the meditation when he said, become nobody. And she's like, what? I am somebody. Like, she took offense to it. And I don't agree with her, but I can identify with that because it depends on how much importance you put on who you think you are, right? So for her, she had an attachment to her identification of who she thinks she is. So she was offended by that. For me, it's freeing because when I go into meditation, Vanessa says it scares me because it's unknown. Yes, Vanessa, that is it. That is it. It is unknown. And that's what we're doing in this work, is learning how to grow more and more comfortable in the unknown, because the known is where there's less room for potential. There's less room for possibility because you can predict almost every outcome based on what you know, right? But we are starting to understand that that is the limitation of this existence. We are so much more limited when we think this is the only reality that exists. This is the only way that I could be. My life can't be much different because of XYZ. Those are your own personal beliefs that are a part of your program, right? It's not a fact for every human that's on this planet. Your truths are yours and yours alone. Now, you might meet people who identify with certain truths that you have, but when it comes to you, looking at your life and looking at who you think you are in relation to your circumstances, the people, places, and things in your life, your truths are yours. That's why Neville taught the law of assumption in the way that he taught it, because what you assume to be true becomes true for you. It's a self fulfilling prophecy. But that is a limitation. If you can expand what you can believe to be true for yourself, then that expansive, you know, your willingness to be expansive in that way is what allows room for possibility for infinite things to happen in your favor, right? B77 says this is part of the release and trust. Then the body and emotion calm. Absolutely. That's the process. Like, meditation is so uncomfortable in the beginning, especially when you're first learning about it, because it's like, what? I'm supposed to sit in this chair? You know, what if something happens? Or I don't know, if you feel like you're not in a safe environment, you're thinking all the thoughts of what about this and what about that? Or did I finish this or did I finish that? I'm trying to plan my day tomorrow. I got this problem. My boss pissed me off yesterday. And who does she think she is? And it's just so much known, right? And there's not a whole lot of room, as Joe teaches, to experience anything different than what your frequency has been tuned into. Because again, time space is where energy is primary and frequency is dominant. So, whatever your frequency is, those beliefs are keeping you in a certain energetic frequency. And I feel like we all are just one degree of separation from being exactly who we know we came here to be. But it's just tuning the dial like a radio station, like tuning into just the right frequency and lingering in that space of something that might be new, because who you are and who you want to be, the degree of separation might feel unfamiliar only because it's not something you've experienced before. And so, what happens when we're in the unknown or unfamiliar? It's uncomfortable. It's like I was listening to someone say, talk about money and how, like, a lot of times lottery winners, they'll win these large sums of money and it feels like a gift and a curse to them because they're not at home with such a large amount of money. It feels unfamiliar. And even though it seems ideal, for some people, it's a huge paradigm shift. And that can be extremely chaotic, and that's why to go from one extreme of like maybe poverty to millions or billions of dollars is a culture shock. It's unknown, it's unfamiliar. And so what do you do with that? You resort to your known, which if you've never really managed a large sum of money, what are your knowns? Survival, spending, paycheck to paycheck. Even though you got a bigger check, you still gonna spend it like it's that paycheck because your mentality is there. It's familiar. Your mentality, you're more familiar with that mentality than those who've probably had large amounts of money for a longer extended period of time and learned how to manage it, or had the hardware downloaded to know what to do with it. So this is like all super interesting conversation. I love this. And I thank you, B7 and Vanessa, for your engagement, because the people watching this in hindsight is really going to help just understand that this is not a linear process and you're not alone in how you feel. And that's why I created this playlist, and I'm building community. So definitely stick around because I do have some announcements. This book will be ending soon, in the next couple weeks. And I will make some announcements about how I want to transition. I also heard, if you found me via TikTok, a really popular TikToker said something that TikTok is going to be banned in the next 2 days or something like that. So I'm so glad that I came over here and I share on this side of social media. So you can always find me here, and also on Instagram. B7 says, you bet, I'm enjoying your talk, the evolution of humanity. Thank you, B7. I'm glad you're enjoying it. I'm glad you're partaking in it. We're tribe. This is what I'm talking about. This is a tribe here, and we all want to be what we came here to be, right? And the only barrier is the limitations of our program. And we're shedding that. We're becoming supernatural. And I love that for us. So I don't want to skip over part 3, but part 3 is where Dr. Joe talks about the illusion of separation from the reality of oneness. So the unified field, the quantum field, is the field of oneness. Nothing is separate. It's all bound by energy that we can't see, touch, feel, taste, touch, and all that, because we don't get to experience it with our 5 senses. We experience it in the stillness within. So this section reminds us that separation is indeed an illusion. It's not real. And let me preface that by saying, I'm not saying that 3D reality is not real, because I hear a lot of people, a lot of people, particularly younger people, like to dismiss this experience as not real. It's real. It's just not the only real that there is. And that's, I like to say it like that. So separation is an experience, but it's not the only experience to have, right? So the more we identify with our senses, our roles, and our struggles, the more disconnected we feel from source and from possibility. But in truth, we're already connected to everything that we desire. If it comes to you, it's a part of you. Don't ever, ever, ever question that. If you remember nothing else from this live, remember it. This. If it comes to you, it's a part of you. You're already connected to it, or it couldn't come to you. Something in your frequency is making you aware that this is something that you are already connected to. But you believe in separation, and that's the only reason, as Neville Goddard says, the only reason you do not experience it is because of your conception of yourself, who you think you are in relation to it, right? So it's our state of being that determines our access to what it is we desire. Who do you think you are? Who do you say you are? Neville was big on teaching this. He was big on teaching this. So this has been the most life-changing piece for me, because realizing that I'm not waiting on the universe, I'm not waiting on life, I'm not waiting on the divine. I am the universe in expression. The divine created all of us, the infinite, to experience itself in infinite ways. When I realized that, I was like, can you just accept your wholeness? Can you do that? Can you accept that you were divinely created with all of your flaws? Can you accept that you are perfect as you are, or the divine would not have created you? Can you accept that it is a privilege to be here? I know it could be hard for a lot of people, but can you accept that the divine chose to express itself in the infinite, through the infinite? We are the infinite, infinite beings, infinite personalities. Yeah. And that's, it says, wow. So we can just exist. Yes. That's what Jesus came to teach us. He told us rest, rest. But the world teaches us that we have to earn our way into worthiness. I just felt a huge, a huge load lift energetically just now from saying that. We were taught that we have to earn our worthiness, y'all. And we believed it. And it's not our fault, and it's no one's fault. It's just the way of this existence. But we came here, we forgot, and now we're remembering that we are the infinite expressed as infinite beings. So your uniqueness, your quirks, your flaws, your this, your that, your personality, what you like, you don't like, it's all divine. It's uniquely you. And you're here, so you matter. At least to the divine, you do. You matter. Or why would the divine go out of its, I won't even say out of its way, to make sure that you're here in this time space reality, that you, of all the sperms, I'm going back to human evolution, of all the sperm that could have impregnated your mother, you came, you're here, and you happen to be tuned into this live stream. That's how much the divine loves you, that the divine wanted you to know this information. as you return to your source. I'm so grateful for this work, y'all. So grateful for this work. Whew. So yeah, this has been the most life-changing chapter for me personally. Um, I'm not waiting on the universe. I'm the universe in expression. And when I operate from love, when you operate from love, when you operate from wholeness and coherence, everything, and I mean everything, begins to align. And sometimes in ways that we cannot predict or even plan. And that's what Dr. Joe says. If you can predict it, then it's not the unknown. You're not leaving room for the divine to be the divine. You're trying to control, force, and manipulate outcomes. But if you can just trust and remember your wholeness because you are, and as Vanessa said, you can just be, you can just exist. When you can rest in that and remember, you move through life very differently, very, very different. Your energy is so very different, so elevated, so loving. You know, when you walk in a room and you feel whole, like Joe says, all you want to do is give because you know you're lacking nothing. All you want to do is give. All you want to do is just spread joy because you know the beauty that it is, the gift that it is to be in this generous present moment. You may not even be feeling like that right now, but something about this conversation is piquing your interest. You came. So you know the truth by the way it feels. You wouldn't be here if you didn't know that what's happening in this chat and here on this live, if it didn't ring true for you, you wouldn't be here. But I'm glad you're here. I'm glad I'm here. We really doing it, y'all. We're really becoming supernatural. This is crazy, but it's cool. I think this is the coolest thing ever. And what's so crazy is I don't have children yet. I have a nephew, and he thinks that what I'm doing is cool, and he's 16. So I'm like, he grew up around me. And our family, we're very much, I don't know if you can see some of this book collection, but this isn't even the half of it. Got some David R. Hawkins, we got all kinds of stuff. The Quran, the Bible. Like, we're a very open, diverse family who we didn't just thankfully get bogged down by one way, one ideology. We were naturally curious about humanity and humanity's existence. So we exposed ourselves to different teachings, and it just brought me back to a universal truth that we're all one. We all want the same things, and all the masters were teaching us the same thing, just in different ways, because we are the infinite and we learn in infinite ways. But this right here is universal. We all got a body. We all understand that biology is a thing. It's the study of how the body works. We're starting to accept and surrender to quantum physics and teachings of that are backed by science and research and data. We trust our doctors without questioning them. Why not learn about who you are, what your existence is, and trust the science behind that? Right? We go to the hospital, we get treated for different disease types, we take medication, we trust scientists to create, pharmaceutical drugs for us to heal, or not even heal, but to patch up symptoms, because we don't heal over here. The Western world does not cure. We treat symptoms, and we don't cure the source. But this is an opportunity. Becoming supernatural is an opportunity to heal at the core, to treat the source of the symptoms, to overcome the patterns that led to the condition. And I'm not just talking about physical, the emotional condition, the physical condition, the emotional condition, the mental condition. We have an opportunity. Yep. So I did get a couple questions. B7 says, this is correct. Innumerable people who die and return, NDEs. Oh my God, you watch NDEs too? Oh my God, listen, there's an NDE I'm about to add to my Dr. Joe Dispenza. I have a testimonial playlist and inspiration playlist. So it's two playlists on my channel. He says, seen them all, kiddo. Listen, I'm sure you have, but there's this one that I keep coming back to. This guy, and it's so timely given what people are going through here in America. But it just he talks about some amazing concepts, and he changing lives just from sharing his NDE. I've heard a lot of them, but his is different. So you said you've been watching NDEs, people who talk about the light, atheists, Christians, thieves, others, all were loved in time. Vanessa, you're fine as you are. No worries. Oh, listen, B7, loving on Vanessa. Vanessa, you are fine as you are. But I love you, B7, for even letting her know that, because it's so true. And yes, like these NDEs, by the way, for anybody who doesn't know what that is, that's a near death experience. And Joe kind of hints at it in some of his workshops, but he talks about it in the beginning of Becoming Supernatural. It wasn't a near death experience, but it was a transcendental meditation that he had. But a lot of wisdom came out of that for him. But these people talk about dying and coming back to life and what they saw on the other side. And it's so fascinating because, as B7 said, these people have all sorts of backgrounds: atheists, Christians, thieves, all kind of people, right? They were just living their lives, and then something happened where they died. And when they were conscious of not being in their physical bodies anymore, they were on the other side. And a lot of the teachings that we're learning and Becoming Supernatural sound, we talk about the quantum field, the unified field, they all explain this black void, and it's very similar. I'm going to tag some of my favorite ones that I think are really complementary to the teachings that we're learning here with Dr. Joe, and just the science that we're understanding to be able to accept this information and really do amazing things in our lives and in the world. Yeah, we have a huge opportunity. It's a responsibility. I was talking to my mom about that. You seen them all? Seen them all, B7. I was talking to my mom about the responsibility. Like, when you know better, what do you do with the information? Like, obviously, first things first, you work on you and you improve your quality of life. But then beyond that, what else, right? What do you do with that? For me, it's showing up here because I don't want to keep this to myself. And then it makes things that much more beautiful when you can commune over transformation. Like, we're talking about how we're changing and what we're understanding about our existence, and how, we just want to exist better, and it has rippling effects. B7 says, funny part is most Christians stop going to church because they found the church limiting. Oh my God, yeah. I grew up Christian Baptist. I love the teachings of Christ, but for the traditional way of which I learned it, I checked out a long time ago, because it was, for me, it was being very limited. And that's why I took to Neville so much, because Neville and the law of assumption, what Abdullah taught him was like understanding the Bible as a book of psychology, and it just made so much more sense, and it was so much more practical. Like, Christ's teachings, Christ's consciousness is to lift your thoughts on high. Like, don't assume the worst of life, because what you assume becomes true for you, and not just for yourself, but what you assume about others. That's the part of them that you get to experience. So for me, I felt like Neville was teaching Christ consciousness in a way that resonates so much more than how we learned a lot of our religions. It just does, because it holds you, the observer, 100% accountable for how you present. And that's what most of us don't like to do. We don't like to be accountable for how we're showing up. We just want to be the victim of life. We want to, woe is me. Life is being so harsh to me. That girl over there, my parents did this. And it's like, yeah, but you have an opportunity to control how you show up, how you allow things to affect you. Are you going to buckle? Are you going to fold because it's a little hard? Are you going to speak kind to yourself and be your own best cheerleader? Vanessa says, I grew up in the church, but I've always been one to have questions about it all, even when I was 6. Same, Vanessa. My grandma And I have a video pinned on my YouTube channel and my TikTok. My grandmother took me to church with her about 4 days a week. Sunday was regular church. Monday was Bible study. Wednesday was usher board practice. I think it was usher board practice and also choir rehearsal. So I was deep in these church streets, but I was always curious because I would do this thing where the pastor could be preaching, but I would just go into now, like I think I liken it to being in meditation. I would go into my own meditative zone and didn't even know what to call it. And I would just be in a zone and I would just be in stillness while all the things were happening all around me at church. And so yeah, I knew that something else was happening. I didn't have the language at that time. B7 says law of attraction. He was teaching. The kingdom of God is inside of you and all around you, not in buildings of church and stone. We're coming to understand that now, B7. Yeah, I think collectively, it's just a natural evolution of humanity, you know. And as we rise in consciousness, it's levels to this, right? And we all have our own awakenings at different times. There were people who were into this work. I'm so passionate about this now, but there were people who were passionate just as I am in this, level of awareness decades ago. And so, we all get it in our own divine time. But I'm very, very grateful that I'm getting it now. And that I have an opportunity. And I feel that all of us that are learning this, we have a wonderful opportunity to affect the world while we're here. To like my mom always says, make it better. Whatever you do, just make it better than when you found it. Make it better. And so I did get two questions I want to give some courtesy to before I conclude part 3. And that's what helps you. Someone said, what helps you remember that you're connected to something greater? What helps me remember that I'm connected to something greater is realizing that we're all not very different. Like we're uniquely individuals, but at our core, we're love. At our core, when we strip away all the labels, we want the same things. If you're here, you want to be supernatural, just like I want to be supernatural. You want to know your potential. You want to know. You want to have an inner conviction for that. You don't want to doubt anymore because you've lived a life of doubt. You've lived a life of, walking through life like a zombie almost, not really being aware. And you don't want to live like that no more. So, doing this work helps me remember that I'm connected to something greater. Hearing the testimonials of people who have miraculous healings, who are changing the trajectory of their families, reviving their relationships and transforming dynamics in their lives, like that helps me remember that I'm connected to something greater. Anybody who's on this live, like, can you share what helps you remember that you're connected to something greater? Because that could be really cool for people to reflect on different perspectives. But that for me is what helps me know. Doing this work, showing up. I've been showing up for, it's been about almost 4 months. I got to do the calculations. I haven't counted, but I think it's been almost 4 months that I've been reading Becoming Supernatural, because I read about a chapter a week. So we're on chapter 11, but I know 1 week I did combine 2 chapters. So that helps me. But showing up consistently to share truth principles really fuels me, because I know that so many people reach out and talk about how helpful it is to just get those reminders. I end my videos by saying, this is your reminder and you got this, because again, we came into this physical plane forgetting that we are source in its infinite forms. And we have to go through the things in life and find our way back to the truth of who we are and what we are, to remember. And so sharing these principles that help people remember, I want you to know I'm not the way, I am the reminder. My demonstration is the reminder. Your demonstration is the reminder for other people. Like Joe says, it's not enough to know, we need to know how. And most people don't like to be lectured to about how they should live and how they should be. The best way to teach is to demonstrate, to walk it, because then people grow curious about, what do you do? Like, what's working for you over there? Like, why are you, able to navigate all these problems so seemingly easy or with such optimism? What's it about you? What do you believe, right? Or what's driving your program? So that for me is what keeps me remembering that I'm connected to something greater, when I could see that what I'm choosing to do, how I'm choosing to spend my generous present moment on a live like this and communing over truth principles and helping people unlock new levels of themselves as I do the same. Like I said, I'm not a coach, I'm not a guru. I'm a woman who's walking the walk and sharing what works for me, right? I hope I answered that question well. And then someone else says, how do you reconnect with the feeling of oneness when life feels chaotic? Baby, my practice. I return to my practice and I don't play about my practice, because my practice keeps me sane. My practice keeps me grounded. My practice helps me remember. My practice helps me shift my energy from survival to homeostasis, to elevated frequencies, to coherence. I reconnect with oneness by doing breath work, recognizing, acknowledging my body, calming my nervous system, doing a meditation, going for a walk, practicing stillness. I have problems. Like, y'all got problems. We all got problems. And I'm not talking about just the stuff that's on the news that we're all, feeling in different ways. Everyday problems. I don't talk about them because I've learned not to wear my problems. I don't have to wear my problems. They are just experiences, as is this life. Everything is temporary. I think perspective wise, my perspective has shifted, and I understand that life itself is temporary. So the things that I could stress over, if my life is temporary, I know this circumstance is absolutely temporary. So am I going to give it that much um, energy, that much, importance? No. And I still react. But like Dr. Joe says, it's not, I don't care about whether or not I react. I care about how long I react. How long am I going to be dysregulated? How long am I going to allow myself to suffer and linger in anxiety and depression? How long am I going to tell myself horrible stories and freak myself out and allow my nervous system to stay dysregulated? For me, not long, not these days, because I realize it's a waste of energy and it's not true. It's a perspective of the infinite perspectives. Remember, time, space, what we do in the stillness is real. And you experience new realities when you tune into the frequency of possibility. And you cannot tune into the frequency of possibility if you are lingering in the past emotions that have been ingrained in your cells. So I reconnect with oneness when my life feels chaotic by returning to my practices, by returning to the generous present moment in meditation, and I don't play about my practice. I'd be nothing without, like, when I say nothing, I don't want to go back to how my life was before I had a practice. And my life wasn't horrible, right? I just, like so many of us, we wear stress. We wear stress. It shows up in our bodies in different ways. Y'all know what I'm talking about. You've been on this supernatural journey with me. I don't want to return back to that way of existing. It's too exhausting. It costs too much. It's too expensive. It's too expensive. Living by stress hormones is too expensive. There's nothing like being healthy, happy, and feeling whole. Once you taste that, you never want to go back. I never want to go back to life before doing this work, in terms of, just letting too much time go by where I don't allow myself to just be, as Vanessa said earlier in the this live. I don't want to let too much time go by without remembering that I am already whole and complete. And all I just need to do is exist. And that is more than enough. So my practice helps me feel oneness. And if y'all have any input, please drop it in the chat because it could be helpful to other people as well. This has been this is probably my longest live, y'all. I usually do lives that last about 40 minutes, but y'all been talking to me. I told y'all I talk back. I don't know why y'all thought I didn't talk back. I talk back. I love to talk. It's my major in college. I went to school to be a journalist, y'all, to be a reporter. And I changed course and now I do public relations, the other side of media. But I love to talk. So talk to me and I'm going to talk back. But if this conversation lit something up in you, I invite you to go deeper, y'all. Go deeper. Develop your practice. Watch the testimonials. Watch some of those NDEs, by the way, because I feel like those near-death experience stories of people from all different walks of life puts into perspective what it means to exist here. And we don't take a lot of this stuff that serious because you realize this whole experience is temporary. So why am I wasting my energy? I don't have time for that. I don't. Let me just do what matters. See, B7 say yep, because B7 is the one that binge watches. He said it, he or she, I don't know if you're a he or she, I'm sorry. But B7 says they seen them all the NDEs. Me too, B7. I am going to link the ones that I feel are very helpful to this work though, because they will definitely, every time you need to be reminded on the hard days or even the really, really good days, they are wonderful reminders. And I'm so grateful to the people that share their NDEs because there's more to this life than we know. And they got to see the other side and come back and tell it. So I've already uploaded parts 1 through 3 of chapter 11. That's what we went over today. I'm going to upload chapter 11, parts 4 and 5, more than likely tomorrow morning. I like to get it out on a Wednesday to let it marinate until my next live on Friday. And the playlist is linked here on my profile on YouTube. It's also linked in my TikTok bio and everywhere else where you can find me. Again, chapter part 4 is titled "The Atom, Fact, and Fiction," and that section is going to change the way you see reality forever. I promise you that. And if you've already read it, then you know what I'm talking about. But I'm gonna upload it, and you'll get to it between Wednesday and Friday, and we'll talk about it on Friday. So thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for doing the work, for being open to this information, these conversations, and for remembering and choosing to remember who you really, really are. We are more than these bodies. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. And I don't know who needs to hear this, but this is your reminder. You got this. Thank you guys. And until Friday, I'll see you next time.